Monique, I don't know if anybody else is having this problem, but I can't hear you. And it looks like you're unmuted.
What about now?
Definitely can hear you now.
All right.
We can hear you now, Mo.
I was just talking away. So that's amazing that you all missed all of my great, wonderful intro. So I was saying, welcome to our first foundational learning series on racism and race equity. And I love to say that we are in the midst of two giants who do this work. I mean, champions who lead this work. I am so appreciative of being in space and community with them today. And I want to remind each of you that this is being recorded so we can share it. We do have a few collaborative members who were unable to attend, but the intent of the recording is just for you all to be able to go back and pull some of the nuggets and gems that will be disseminated today throughout our training. I wanted to take an opportunity to also allow to say my colleagues to say hello. So we have Saba in the room with us today from California, which most of you have met, along with Kaya and Kyle as well. But we won't belabor the point because we've spent time with you. We're going to turn it over to Caesar and Jason and let them take us on this wonderful journey today. Caesar and Jason, it's in your hands.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We hope that it's a perfect launch into your weekend. My name is Caesar. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I will be one of your co-facilitators today. I'm very excited to be here. We've been in partnership with folks at CSH for the past few years, and I'm so delighted that Saba can join us. Kia, it's so good that you're here. Kyle, Monique, it's just, it feels like home when we come back to do these trainings. A little bit about myself. I'll introduce myself really briefly, and then I'll pass it over to my co-facilitator. Again, my name is Caesar. My last name is Aleman. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a Connecticut resident since 2014. I used to live in Hartford and recently bought a house in Elmwood in West Hartford. I come into the work of racial equity deeply committed to building the type of reality that I wish would have been possible for me as I grew up. You'll hear a little bit more about our stories and sort of what calls us into the work. Some things that are important for you to know about me are that I identify as Mexican, queer, brown, and undocumented. These identities are really important to me, and they are the ways in which I see and experience the world. And just as importantly, they're the ways in which the world sees me and treats me. And so these experiences have shaped my lens. They've shaped the way that I navigate the world. They build my armor in many ways, an armor that I've spent the last 10 years trying to take off so that I can live into my full humanity and that I can share that with others so that we can build collective power to change the systems that force us into building armors for ourselves. And I'm so delighted because housing is a system that's deeply connected and close to my heart. I believe that it is one of the pillars that allows us to really live into our full humanity. This display, the space where we get to experience love, joy, laughter, pain. It's the place where we get to retrieve. And most importantly for me, it's the place where I get to build community. It's in my house, it's around my table, it's in the kitchen over a meal. And so I'm really delighted that we're going to be doing some work and that you all are working within the system of housing. And we're not going to go too much deeper. I'm going to pass it over to Jason. Thank you all for being here. Jason, take it away.
Thanks, Caesar. Thanks, Monique, and all. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Jason Fredlin. I use he, him, and his pronouns. I work as a racial justice educator and equity consultant. I live here in Hartford. I actually own a home, a multifamily home. I'm a landlord. I have 2 Section 8 tenants. So not a sort of traditional provider in the sense. I feel actually really lucky to have the particular tenants that I do are folks that I have known and been in community with for almost 2 decades. So my tenants on the first floor are 2 young men who are brothers who I started mentoring when they were 7 and 9. And so now 20 years later, they're 27 and 29, and they are tenants of mine. So being involved in the Hartford community, Hartford's been my home for the last 15 years. It's been a place that's been very deep, a place of deep connection for me for the last 20 years or so. But I grew up in the northwest corner of Connecticut, in Thomaston, Connecticut, in a town that is today 98.6% white. And it is more racially diverse today than it was when I was young. And so I say that I'm white, and I've been white for 36 years. I've only known that I'm white for about 12 years. And we'll talk more about what we mean by that. But of course, we know that race is a social construction. And in this construction, people of color are often racialized, and white people often exist as the norm. And that was certainly my experience. I wasn't aware of my whiteness or the way that it was significant to how I saw the world and how the world saw me, as well as the power that it gave me access to until I was in my mid-20s. Some other things about me: I'm queer, I'm progressive Christian, I'm cisgender, I have a couple of invisible disabilities, a chronic pain disorder. The intersection of being queer and being a person of faith has really been an interesting journey for myself. And I'll just sort of say only very briefly that for a long time, my commitments to Christian spirituality and my commitments to justice and liberation felt very different. I didn't feel like I could talk about my faith in my justice spaces, and I didn't feel like I was going to talk about justice in my faith spaces. And that's not a dichotomy that I can contend with any longer. And so I feel really lucky to be in spaces and doing a lot of faith organizing work where I get to be really honest about why my commitments to justice work are rooted in a Christian tradition that, while I feel really complicated about, because of the connections between Western Christianity and white supremacy, I also am really proud and rooted in that. And that is a part of the way that I enter this work. And so I think it's important to name that. Yeah, as Cesar said, we'll be sharing more of us because this work is so deeply relational and deeply personal. We'll be sharing of ourselves as we spend time together this afternoon. We're really honored to be on this call with y'all. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Thank you so much, Jason. And just like you'll learn about us, we are looking forward to learning about you. We're going to really dive into sort of why we're here today. And our hope is, and actually, Jason, I wonder if you could scoot back to our welcoming slide. Oop, or forward. We bypassed a couple of things that I think are important to sort of just quickly share before we go into our objectives for today. So one is, I know that some folks were sort of diving in and coming into the room as we were already introducing ourselves. It might be helpful, I know that you all know each other, but we're still getting to know one another, to share in the chat, to just sort of introduce your name, your town, and your organization and role. And we would love to hear just one feeling word that describes where you're at right now. If you have any questions or needs as we keep going through this session, we are in 2020. Actually, we're in 2021, but I feel like it's just an extension of 2020. So we're living into the world of like doing everything virtual. And we know that sometimes there's hiccups. So if you need tech support, don't be afraid to reach out. You can contact me or Jason directly in the chat privately, or you can let one of our CSH members also know that you need support. And we're going to talk about BIPOC affinity space, BIPOC meaning Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so I'll share that in a little bit, but those first 3 points were the ones that I wanted to highlight. Thank you, Jason, for going back. I'm sorry that I messed it up. And then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about what our objectives are for the day and what we think will happen in the next hour and 48 minutes that we are together. So we are really here. Our main objective moving forward is to create a safe, brave space where we can have productive dialogue about race and equity. In order to do that, we need to build community. We need to deepen relationships. No real deep conversation around race and equity can happen without the strength of relationship to withhold it. And so we're going to really be committed to, like Jason said, get to know one another. We're going to share of ourselves. And we're going to hopefully get to learn more about you, and you're going to get to build community today. We're going to explore our equity and practice guidelines, which are both tools that we're going to practice here, but tools that we hope you can take with you wherever you go, so that we can begin to engage in practical ways to do this work. We're going to have an opportunity to examine our individual experiences, our socialization, and our identity development. And that's kind of the taste that you got out of our introductions today. So you'll have an opportunity to engage with that as well. And then we're going to develop a shared language around issues of power, privilege, oppression, racism, and equity. We are all coming to the table with knowledge. We want to honor that, and we want to collectively come together to an agreement about what it is that we mean when we say certain things, so that as we begin to dive deeper into some of the issues that you'll be grappling with, and that we have been grappling with, if we're being honest, that we have an opportunity to really build on that. So that's kind of our overview for the day. Obviously, we understand that we are operating in a space where you might be pulled away. So we encourage you, if you needed, to take a break. We do have, Jason, actually, forgive me. Do we have a break schedule? We do not. We do not have a break schedule.
There is space in the agenda for a self-care break if necessary at the halfway point. And so we're going to check in with y'all and see if you want to push or if we need a break.
Thank you, Jason. And so please go ahead and do that if there's something you need to do. We understand that you might be zoomed out. It's Friday and it's been a long week. I know I am. If you can, we highly encourage you to keep your camera on. It is so hard already to connect like in a virtual space and deepen relationship. But one of the ways that we do it is by like trying to keep eye contact, see people, get a sense of like who's in the room. But if you're at a place where you can't do that, we understand. Just go ahead and feel free to try to be as present as you can be. I will go ahead and just share with you a couple other really quick things that feel really important. My colleague Jason developed this really wonderful idea to develop community gardens when we do workshops and trainings. 2 hours is just not enough time. We understand that, a lot of things that we're talking about today might be familiar to you, and some of these things might actually be new seeds that we are planting. And so we want to go ahead and grow together, and we want to plant those seeds and water them. And that requires some time to really think about them, to share them with other people, to discuss them. And so over the course of the day, if you would like, you can go ahead and go into the link that Jason just dropped in the chat, and you can go ahead and take some notes. You can take anything that you feel like was important about what we're sharing, questions that you might have, and put it in that community garden. And then we can always come back to it and kind of build on it. The idea is that if this feels useful to you, you have it as a space to kind of capture your notes. And if it doesn't feel useful to you, go ahead and bypass it. It's not necessary. We just want to offer that. It's been a really fruitful tool that we've used in the past now that we're virtual. And then lastly, go ahead, Jason.
Can I just hop in real quick?
Yes,
because
please.
This is the first of a two-part session with Caesar and I, it'll be actually really helpful for us to think about what's resonating and what's experiencing as needing more information. And so if it works for you to use that, it's a great place for us to be able to offer additional support and think about what we need to shift and modify for session 2.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, Jason, for that, because you're totally right. You will not be getting rid of us today. So he's right. This will be a great place to capture that. And then lastly, I want to circle back to the BIPOC affinity space, which I briefly mentioned at the very beginning. So for us, BIPOC, again, is Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Affinity space is going to be an intentional opportunity for us to create space for people who share an identity, so that we can convene for learning, for support, to make connection, to start to do some healing around some of the conversations that we're going to have today. So we're going to have this virtual affinity space as an opportunity for you to work with peers to address the impact of racism, to interrupt experiences of internalized racism, and also to create a space for healing and to work on our own individual and collective liberation, which we're going to define and talk about more further. So if you are somebody who's interested, again, if you are Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, and in the moment where we offer a breakout, you would like to be specifically put in a room that's a BIPOC affinity space, I would encourage you to do one of two things. One is you can go ahead and put an asterisk in front of your name so that we can identify that. And the other one is that you can just private message Jason or myself. So again, if you want to be in a BIPOC affinity space, which is simply an affinity space for people of color, Black people, and Indigenous people to come together, let us know. And if you don't, that's also okay. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Thanks. So Caesar and I are the facilitators of this space. So it's our job to create and maintain the container. And so we just want to share with you just a few foundational values. Oh, interesting. Do you see this thing that says it's not loading? Is that what you all see also?
No, we see it.
Oh, cool. It actually has 4 different things.
I saw it, but now it's
not the circle. Let me try reloading.
No,
all right,
it's
well,
not reloading.
Cool. So there's a very beautiful image that has these 4 bullet points that Caesar and I are going to talk through that for whatever reason is not visible right now, but we'll still tell you what they are. So we have 4 foundational values that kind of ground and guide how we approach the work of equity and justice. And we're going to share these with you because we think it's important for you to know how we're entering. So the first is the concept of multi-partiality. We know that we live in a world where power is not equally distributed based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, and all kinds of other things. There are reasons why people experience more power than others. And so as a way to recognize and respond to that, we're going to practice multi-partiality rather than claiming impartiality. So as facilitators, we're not impartial. We're going to be multi-partial. That means we're going to give preference and priority to women, non-binary folks, people of color. Having an optional BIPOC affinity breakout space is a way that we practice multi-partiality. And there are others. We just want to let you know that. So see, I don't know why it's coming up, but if you want to talk about the next one.
Yeah, definitely. I just put it back into a slide so that it wasn't just blank. The next one is going to be practicing compassionate accountability. We are here, everyone who's here is here interested in learning more. It's interested in your own personal growth, and we are interested in holding each other accountable, right? So I think what happens a lot of times in spaces when we're having conversations is our intentions don't always align with the impact of our words, our actions, potentially even our ideas. And so what we want to do is we want to practice accountability and hold each other accountable to help each other make that alignment. A way that I align those 2 things is through compassionate accountability. I honor people's intentions, but still hold them accountable for the impact of their words and their actions. And so we're going to create a space today here where we do that collectively, and where hopefully we can create a cohort that does that over the course of your time together. And you're muted.
I had the image up for a minute and now it's gone again. So listen, y'all, technology is what it is. Our third foundational value is that we're going to experience discomfort. We're going to come up against some growth edges that may feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And I'll say really specifically, when we're talking about race, it's often white people who feel uncomfortable first because we have not been socialized to have the skills or the resilience to lean in and remain present in uncomfortable conversations. And we're just going to say that that's to be expected and that's okay. And we are going to allow ourselves and others to experience discomfort. There's often this sense of expectation that people of color and specifically women of color should caretake for the discomfort of white people. And we're actually going to intentionally disrupt that expectation by saying when white folks are experiencing discomfort and coming upon our growth edges, that's okay. We're going to allow for us to experience that. I sometimes think of the analogy of a butterfly. A butterfly coming out of its cocoon struggles for up to 24 hours at times to be able to stretch its wings to come outside of that cocoon. When scientists saw that struggle and they started cutting away at the cocoon so the butterfly didn't need to get out, and they actually realized the butterfly needs that struggle to develop the strength in its wing structure to be able to fly. And so if you rob the butterfly of the opportunity to struggle so it can get its wings out, it won't be able to fly. And the same is true for people who are learning to come against the patterns of dominance and internalized supremacy. We have to struggle through that. There's no other way. There's not an easy out. And so we're going to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable and to be challenged and to keep growing together throughout the process.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason. I love that analogy. I don't think I heard you use that before. And lastly, one of the things that we're going to do here today is we're going to center race. And that's what's going to create that need to experience discomfort. Oftentimes we have a tendency when talking and tackling issues of racism and talking about race to come back and try to approach it from a different oppressive experience. So we can talk about sexism, we can talk about, you know, ableism, we can come back and talk about something else. And oftentimes the question will be like, well, what about this? What about this other type of oppression? What about this other type of harm that's being caused? Like, why don't we talk about that? The truth of the matter is that we are going to be talking about all these things because they are interconnected. I was recently doing a conversation with someone where we were talking specifically around anti-immigrant sentiments and xenophobia. And they were really moving away from wanting to talk about race at all. They did not want to talk about intersections of that. And what I loved about that conversation was that it opened up the room, and one of my colleagues said something that was really beautiful, which was essentially, we cannot address all issues and all forms of oppression without first looking at what has made the dehumanization of people possible in this country and in our context. And that is the enslavement of Black people. And so if we want to talk about these other systems of oppression, which we need to, and we have to, we cannot decenter the conversation around race. It is necessary that we tackle it and that we understand what is at the root of this, because there is no separation. They are interconnected. And so we are going to be doing that today. Let me call you into centering that.
Awesome. Thanks, Cesar. So that's our foundation. And we wanted to share it with you so you know where we're coming from. Now we want to move into a process of engaging in a community building circle, a chance for us to hear from you and for you to hear from one another. So I actually, Mo, if you could take Cesar and I off of Spotlight, and what I would invite is you have, the way that I have it set up on my screen is a split screen side by side. So I have the screen share on one side and then the gallery mode of the photos on the other side. And there's a little toggle bar in between that you can slide to make the screen larger or smaller and make the images bigger. So you might be able to get it so you have all of the videos up on your screen. That would be ideal. That way you can see the reactions and engagements of one another's faces. Again, you're invited to have your cameras on if that is possible based on where you are and if your technology supports it. We understand that that's not always the option. So we're going to engage in a virtual community building circle. We love sitting in circles when we're together in the same room. That's not an option that we have together today. So we're going to do this community building circle. So you'll see up on your screen our virtual community building circle with our plant right in the middle. Hopefully everyone on this call should see their name somewhere on our virtually community building circle. That's where you're sitting in the circle. If you don't see your name, send a quick chat to Cesar and we'll find a way to rectify that right now. But we think that we have an accurate accounting of who's on this call, so you should all see your name. So if we were in person, I would say, turn to the person on your left, turn to the person on your right, offer them a word of greeting, say hello. Well, we're going to recreate that in the private chat feature of the chat box on Zoom. Look to the person who's before you on the circle and the person after you on the circle. So I'll find my name, Jason, Cesar's before me, Saba's after me. I'm going to send a quick private welcome, hey, what's up, in the chat box to Cesar and Saba, and I'm going to invite you all to do the same as well. Our guess is most of you are familiar with many of the functions of Zoom, but at the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat box. When you pop up the chat box, towards the bottom of that, you'll see a drop down or a drop up menu where you can select everyone, or you can select the individual name of one person and send them a private or direct message. That's what we're going to invite you to do. Send a private or direct message just to the folks who are on either side of you in the circle. And we'll give you a couple of moments to do that now. Oh, do you not have the ability to do that? Oh, I see. Oh. What I'm realizing is some of our names on our display may not match the names that are in the circle.
Oh, apologies, y'all. I was
No, it's
using
okay.
a sign-up sheet.
I see. And it may be that someone's calling in on a number, and so that might be why the number doesn't match. So that could be the issue.
Got it.
Yep.
I can change whoever's on the line on the phone. I can change the phone number to reflect. I mean, if that would be helpful. If so, feel free to unmute and let me know.
Or if someone called in twice, because they may be on screen, but they chose to call in as well. So just private message us. I don't know if someone called. You're on your computer, but you also called in. We just want to make sure we don't miss anyone.
Cool. Another day, another tech challenge. So we always are coming up with a list of challenges and responses to them. So hopefully you had just a quick moment to send and receive a message of welcome and greeting. If not, that's okay. This is actually the only time we'll use the private chat feature on our call. And we're trying to make use of some of the different functionalities that Zoom has to sort of recreate some of the opportunity of what it would feel like to be together in person. So we're going to engage together in this community building circle process for a variety of reasons. There was a time before race and racism, if you can believe it. There actually, not just a time, most of human history existed before the construction of race and racism. It's a relatively modern construction. And all of us have ancestry to somewhere. And all of us have ancestors who at some point sat together in circles, likely around a fire for light, for warmth, for food. And in those circles, they talked, they listened, they asked questions, they built relationships, they solved problems. Today, we're going to engage in a virtual circle process that's designed to help us get to know one another, speak and listen with honesty and respect, to give and receive support as it's needed, and hopefully to build a deeper community. At the center of our in-person circles, we usually have a plant, something that grounds us and reminds us of the sense of the sort of universal connection of all living things, as well as the reality of growth and new life coming from the middle. So we've got this virtual plant here. We're going to begin our circle with an opening statement. And today we're going to have an opening statement guided by the words of Yolo Akili, who is a Black, queer, organizer, activist, educator, author who is living today. We think it's important that we think about our ancestors, but also our living legends. And so today we're going to I'll lift up this quote from Yolo Akili. Remember, oppression thrives off isolation. Connection is the only thing that can save you. Remember, oppression thrives on superficiality. Honesty about your struggles is the key to your liberation. Remember, your story can help save someone's life. Your silence contributes to someone else's struggle. Speak so we all can be free. Love so we all can be liberated. The moment is now. We need you. When we lead an in-person circle, we use a talking piece. Today, we're simply going to follow the order that's shown on our virtual circle. When it's your turn to share, you'll unmute and answer or respond, and then you'll return to mute and the next person will just go. We don't need to call on people. We don't need to say, next I'll pass it to. You'll just share when it's your turn and then return to mute. Everyone will have an opportunity to respond to every question or prompt, and you're not obligated to. If you would prefer to pass on any round, we'll still ask that you unmute yourself and verbally say pass. That way we can sort of limit the need to kind of like hand motions and things. But do know that you're not required to share. It's our hope that everyone will, but the option to pass does exist. So you'll see that in the current way the circle is designed, I'm listed as first, and then the arrows are pointing in a particular direction. So when I'm done, I'll put myself on mute, and Saba will be the next person to go, and then we'll just follow around in order. We're going to begin with a check-in round, and this will be also an opportunity to do some introductions. So we're going to ask you to share some kind of like basic information about yourself. So first is name and then pronouns. Pronouns, of course, are how you like to be referred to in the third person. So if you weren't in the room, how would you like someone to refer to you? Common examples are he, him, his, she, her, hers, they, them, theirs, name as pronoun. There are a whole variety of other options. So name and pronouns if you like. The words that you use to describe your race and ethnicity, and you can use the 5 categories on the US Census, or you can use whatever terms feel true for you to describe your race and ethnicity. We also love for you to tell us your role and your relationship to CSH. That's the background information that we do want to know, because that's important too. And then these images represent our check-in, your head, your heart, and your hands. For the sake of time, we're going to ask you to assign only one word or one phrase for each of these. How's your head? What's on your mind? How are your thoughts? What's going on with you mentally? Your heart. How are you in your spirit? How is your heart? How are you doing emotionally? And then your hands is an opportunity to talk about your body. How are you physically? Like what's going on with you physically? Are there any particular needs that you might need around accessibility that we should be aware of? So this is our introductions and our check-in. So I'll go first. My name is Jason. I use he, him, and his pronouns. I am white. Ethnically, I'm Italian, Irish, German, French, and a bit of a mix of other Northern European stuff. I know that not because I grew up with a connection to my ethnic heritage, but because my parents recently did a 23andMe thing. So I'm white in the traditional sense of white without a real connection to any sense of ethnic background. I work as a racial justice educator and equity consultant. I think this is our 3rd year helping to launch and kick off the collaborative for race equity with CSH. I used to be a physical neighbor to CSH. My office was the floor above CSH's in Hartford. So that's my connection to CSH. My head is feeling stretched. My heart is feeling grateful. And my hands, I'm a little jittery.
Hi, everyone. My name is Saba Muine. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as an African woman. It's always a long story when I say where I'm from. I also identify as an immigrant. My father was from Uganda, and this is an image of my father's country on the eastern side of the eastern side of Uganda. And my mom is from Egypt, and I've lived in both countries growing up and experienced anti-Black racism, especially overtly in Egypt. Both of those countries were colonized by the British, oddly. And now I'm really starting to understand how anti-Black racism shows up in Uganda. And so I'm really interested in now like the global perspective. So what I do, I'm a race equity practitioner and educator. I've also had the pleasure and honor to be in service to the Connecticut Collaborative for Race Equity since its start, alongside our brothers here, Jason and Caesar. Today in my heart, I feel such a wonderful sense of groundedness in our community space. And I don't even know how to put it in words. It's like the knowing of our hearts connected in this circle and our community in this circle, even though I haven't had the chance to individually get to know everyone yet, but this sense of brethren with you in this work here and in the world. And that makes me feel really, really like flying. Like I'm just so in joy, and like to see, just to experience this with you, I feel like I'm like kind of like at a Beyonce concert, like watching like Jason and Caesar, and this is my jam, and I'm just so alive. And I really have a lot of love. I have so much love for you. And I'll stop talking, and thank you so much for the space.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I am Talia Hooks. I really don't like pronouns, but I guess you could say it's me. Pronoun is me, she, her. Um, I identify myself as a Black woman. My ethnicity, as with Jason, um, I've learned is a lot of Middle Eastern and European and African spaces, and a little bit of Southern. So we all know how that became. Um, my role is a housing case manager at St. Vincent de Paul here in Middletown. My relationship with CSH started as attending training, evolved quickly into being part of last year's collaboration as far as the summit went. And then I bounced quickly here into the becoming part of this lovely cohort for, is this cohort three? Cohort number three. So my head is swimming. Um, my heart is full, and my hands, as Jason said, not jittery, but I do suffer from the same chronic pain myself. So I'm definitely in relation with you, Jason, on that. So today is a good day. So that's where my hands are.
So,
Okay, sorry, I couldn't find unmute. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Jessica Jean Baptiste. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Um, I identify as a Black woman. My mom is majority white. My dad is Black. I recently did my ancestry and found that I have a interesting mix of European and other things, but my African is majority, in a large way, Nigerian. So that's very interesting. I didn't know that for a long time. I am the quality improvement coordinator at RMP, and I am blessed to work with Cheryl Bell, who helped to write the framework, and Letitia Brown Gambino, who I believe was, I'm not sure if he was one or two. Um, One, okay. So they connected me with Monique, and I also quickly ended up here, thankfully. Um, my head is full. I'm a mom, so my brain is always going 100 miles a minute. My heart is extremely grateful, and I said my hands are tired, but happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Yoshi Bird, and my pronouns are she and her. Um, my race and ethnicity, I would identify as multiracial, my ethnicity being sort of Japanese and Italian. Um, I'm the assistant director at a homelessness services agency in Hartford, South Park Inn. And I think my head is exploding, honestly, just because the people that I supervise, there's a director who's on vacation this week. So I was really hoping to have like completely quiet, like focused space for this meeting. And it just keeps getting interrupted, which is frustrating. And then I have, my heart is filled. I feel like this has been a year where I've seen the worst of people, but also the best of people. And it's been And so just everything about this experience fills my heart, and my hands also tired.
Good morning. Just making sure you guys can hear me because I'm on my phone and the computer.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. My name is Melinda Mallory. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as a Black American. My ethnicity, kind of, French and Native American. My mother is biracial, Black and French. And we have traced our heritage to Native American lineage. So we're still researching that. My role with Columbus House in New Haven is I'm the Director of Emergency Services. So I oversee all the day-to-day operations as it relates to case management, outreach, and shelter services. My relationship to CSH, I too was introduced to this program by Letitia Brown Gambino maybe 2 years ago, but schedules just didn't match up and I wasn't able to participate. My CEO introduced it to me this year, so I decided to clear my schedule and make myself available because I wanted to be a part of it. My head is busy, my heart is full, and my hands, I'm healthy. So that's it.
So that means I start. My name is, I feel like I need some I can't see anything.
Yes, you're ready, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Because I can't see myself. I just am seeing Melinda's little thing. So nice to meet y'all. My name is Margaret Middleton. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as white. My ethnicity is some mix of Germany stuff on my mom's side and Scotch Irish stuff on my dad's side, but not something that anybody knows that much about. My role is as the CEO of Columbus House, and my relationship to CSH, I'm not actually sure. I think I just got an email about this and was like, yes, this sounds great, sign me up, which I then, I think, forwarded to Melinda because I was like, there's a number of people here from Columbus House, and I am hoping that we as a group can kind of take some of our shared learning with us, to our agency. My head is pretty fatigued. I got the second coronavirus shot on Wednesday, so I'm hitting a wall right now of being ready to go back to my bed. But my heart is very open and inspired. My hands are busy 100% of the time. I use these little fidget things. I definitely have some attention deficit challenges that online life has exacerbated. So I'll do my best.
So I don't see display names that match Lena, Sherry, and Talea. So those three are not here for this. Great, so we're gonna go directly from Margaret to Tina. And we'll do that for each round. Oh, is there not a Tina also? Oh no, there's a Tina.
I don't know if she's frozen. Tina?
Yeah, it looks like it may be frozen. Why don't we, maybe we'll hop to okay, cool. We'll hop to Jasmine for now, and then if Tina comes back, we'll give her an opportunity. Thanks all for working through this together.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine Pierce. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I identify as African-American Costa Rican. So my dad is African-American, Ivory Coast after doing the ancestry DNA. And he's also a Jamaican. I don't identify as Jamaican just because I don't know that part of me at all. So I'm going through this diversity learning within myself. And then my mother is Native American and Costa Rican. So this is a lot of just my own transition, just trying to learn who I am. I grew up in a very suburban town with, again, I was one of 3 families of color, if that. So it's very new of how I'm living now and who I want to become. So that's just the backstory. So I'm currently the Rapid Rehousing Program Manager at CCADV, so the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And my relationship with CSH is very new. This is my first time working with anyone here. I think the only organization that I really know of is Columbus House, because I worked for the Umbrella Center in New Haven and Estonia, so I work closely with the cans there. But other than that, this is all very new for me.
Hello, I'm Calpurnia Roberts. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and identify as African American. My family did the Ancestry.com test and found that we're predominantly from Congo, and then we have some traces of family from Nigeria and Andorra. So that was pretty interesting to find out. In terms of my role or relationship to CSH, I am working in Massachusetts, so I'm a director for their initiative to build more permanent supportive housing. But I attended the collaboration or summit that was hosted by CSH last year, and I really enjoyed it. So I reached out to find out if I could do more, and I was informed about this group. And so I really wanted to join because of the fact that there's so many people of color here. It's a nice resource and chance for me to just to absorb and learn more about racial equity and things like that. So I'm really happy to be here. And I want to thank Monique and Saba for allowing me to be here, even though I'm not in the Connecticut area. In terms of my head, I'm feeling a bit foggy, honestly. I think I might be a little sick. I don't think it's COVID, but I think I'm a little sick. In my heart, it's just feeling a little tired, to be honest. And then my hands are just feeling like they need to rest. But overall, I'm happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Perez. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I identify as white. My ethnicity, I mostly identify as Irish and Italian. Over the years, we were told that we were Slovak, but we did the 23andMe and found out that it's actually Polish. So that's been a little bit interesting. And then sort of a mix of other European countries. I am the Director of Housing Services for Columbus House. Over the years, I was a manager previously, and then in my role in a different organization, I attended trainings through CSH. Not sure how I got the emails for this, but I'm really excited that I did, and I'm so happy to be here. My head, surprisingly, is very focused today. I don't know if it's because it was tired some days this other week, so it held out till today. My heart is feeling filled. I'm so happy to be here. But hands, I'm definitely tired though. I could use a nap. So thank you.
Hi everyone, Marvin, he, him, his pronouns. I'm Black, and I am an Equity and Engagement Associate at Supportive Housing Works in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was introduced to CHA through my supervisor, Janita Hayes, and I also had the privilege of being in a few meetings in the fall with Monique. And so CHA has always been in the back of my mind, and I jumped at the opportunity to join this collective. My head is leveled, heart is full, and my hands are nimble.
And I don't know if you wanted to let Tina go before I go, because I see that she's back and her audio is reconnected.
I'm sure, Tina, are you on the call? You wanted to go next?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm on my cell phone now because my computer just completely lost internet service, so I can't see anybody but Tina Ortiz, she, her, hers. I am a Senior Director for Housing and Veteran Services for CRT. I think in regards to my role with CSH has been primarily trainings. I miss race and ethnicity. Okay, bear with me, it's so tiny. Okay, my race, Black American, and my ethnicity is Louisiana Creole. And my head, I'm enthralled in everything that's happening right now, intrigued. My heart is, I'm anxious in a good way. And my hands, which sort of end up relating to my heart, is heart palpitations. That's what I'm feeling right now. Thank you.
And so, hello everyone again. My name is Monique Price Taylor, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as a Black woman or African American woman. And my role in relationship to CSH is I'm one of the coordinators for the Connecticut Race Equity Collaborative, I think, which is one of the things that I enjoy to do. My head at the moment is figuring out who can I get to go pick up my car from the dealer. My heart, I would say, is really just full of love. I woke up in a place of gratitude this morning. So I'm full of a lot of love and compassion and commitment. And my hands, I would say, are really ready to work. I'm just ready to go. So I am ready to get it done. So thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kaya Kennebrew, she, her, hers pronouns. I am Black, and actually, I'm not 100% sure of my ethnicity, so I don't really have or never had a relationship with my biological father, so I don't really know their ethnicity on that side. And my mother's side, I know there's African history, but I'm not sure where, and I haven't done any of the tests yet. I'm just a bit reserved about it, so I'm not 100% sure, but I identify as Black. Roles, I am the program coordinator with CSH for the Eastern Region and Fund Development, and I am also a part of the collaborative team. So I'm one of the coordinators for this particular project. My head is a little cloudy, but still focused. My heart, I would say, is connected, and my hands, I would say, is a little bit fatigued. I'm tired today. So.
Hi, everybody. Kyle Barrett. Pronouns he, him, his. Identify as a white man. Ethnically, so my grandparents, along with my great-grandparents on both sides, moved to Danielson, Connecticut from Quebec. So I'm French Canadian on both sides, and that's still like a really big part of my family culture and holidays, and still language for both sides of the grandparents. Relationship to CSH is they pay the bills. I'm a program manager with CSH, and I'm a support to my colleagues that are leading this work here. And my head is full, as others have said, and jumping around. My heart feels strong though, and my hands feel a little bit shaky from all the caffeine today.
It remuted, Dominique.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hi, my name is Dominique Johnson. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Senior Rapid Rehousing Case Manager for Columbus House at their Middletown office. I identify myself as a Black woman.
my ethnicity, after doing the ancestry.com, I found out a lot of my family is from the Congo in Africa. Then they migrated to South Carolina. As far as my relationship to CSH, last year I was a speaker on the panelist, and I really enjoyed it. And my supervisor at the time, Caroline, who's also here today, talking with her and stuff like that, I signed up again to be a part of it and a bigger aspect of it. My head is busy, my heart is happy and full, and my hands are restless.
Thank you so much, Dominique. And I apologize. I was trying to ask you to unmute and I accidentally muted you again. So that was my bad. Hey, everybody. Name is Caesar. Pronouns are he, him, his. My race is a mixed race. I'm white, black, and indigenous. My ethnicity is deeply connected to my nationality. So I'm Mexican. So culturally, that's a big part of like my ethnicity as a Latinx person. I am a consultant, an independent consultant to CSH at this project. I do anti-racism work and racial equity work. And I am also a full-time organizer, broad faith-based organizing, working specifically on issues that intersect with race and poverty. My head is fragmented. I'm trying really hard to compartmentalize all of the big things that I have. My heart is overjoyed and tender, and my hands are cold. So I'm going to put them in my pockets. Thank you all so much for taking the time to share with us. We know that you've had opportunities to connect, and we know there's going to be many more opportunities for you to connect. So, feel free to write some questions down and stay in the chat. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to dive deeper a little bit into sort of why we're here and have an opportunity. This is a gift. It's really an opportunity for you to do some self-reflection and to share your story and your why with somebody else. So the pair share, you're going to, in a moment, be put into breakout rooms with one other person. We're going to leave you in that room for about 4 minutes. So you have about 2 minutes each. And we're going to ask you to share a story about an experience you had with racism or racial justice that embodies your interest in this racial equity cohort. So what is your entry point? What brings you here today? And what motivates you and drives you to do the work of racial justice and equity? In order to give you an opportunity to reflect on that and also to model it, I'll share with you my entry point into this work, which I hinted at when we started. I shared with you that I grew up as an undocumented immigrant in this country, and a huge part of the migration experience and the immigrant experience for me and for my family has been the search for a better future, for opportunity and for prosperity. And that's deeply connected to where we live in our home, in our houses. And so my journey from LA, well, my journey from Mexico, where I was born, all the way to Connecticut, where I live now, has taken me through a series of different moves that have all been motivated by finding a new house, a new home, a place to build a home in. And so when I think about why I do justice work, and when I think about specifically why I'm committed to housing justice work, is because in my experience, housing is the system that has really opened up all of the opportunities and all of the experiences that have shaped who I am. And so growing up, I didn't have the words, I didn't have the language, I didn't have the frameworks to talk about what I experienced. But over the course of the last 35 years, I have been discriminated against, I have been redlined, I have been denied opportunities in housing, and suffer a great loss, both to my humanity and to my relationships because of lack of access to stable, clean, and healthy housing conditions. And that's something that I didn't understand until I came fully into my my 20s and I graduated college and I started working in a real estate office and I started working within housing and I started to really deeply connect and understand the various ways in which housing is one of the strongest indicators for what prosperity can look like for humans in this country and in the world. And so in that experience, I was able to see how it intersects with health. You know, when people don't fix your home, when people don't respond to the needs of it, when there's mold and rodents and all kinds of insects and critters living in your home, I got to see how it impacted people's ability to get an education because we are so deeply connected and rooted in a system where schools are funded based on where you live. And so I saw people working really hard to try to give their kids access to opportunity and education. And I saw how hard it was based on where you lived. And all of these things are actually what sort of propelled me and pushed me into the work of justice, specifically housing justice. And it was a challenging thing to make sense of. I've been making sense of it for the last 10 years. I've been on a journey to sort of really understand all of the layers. And after 10 years, I can say confidently that I feel like I have a good grasp on the roots of it. And every day when I'm in spaces like the one here today, I get to learn and unpack more about my own personal experience in the housing system, as well as the many ways in which it intersects with others. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm excited, and I'm really deeply connected to this, and I'm excited that we're all here. In a moment, I'm gonna open the breakout rooms, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to connect with a partner. So when you see it, hopefully, Tina, I know that you're on your phone, hopefully it'll pop up and take you to the breakout room. Jason and I will go ahead and give you a timer at 2 minutes to make sure that the other person shares. But we're gonna go ahead and break you into rooms. Jason?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we actually have it set so the breakout room is only 4 minutes long. So you should actually see your own countdown timer. We'll tell you the secret. When we close the room at 4 minutes, you'll have another 60 seconds. So it's really 5 minutes. But plan on using the time equally at about 2 minutes apiece. And then you'll have a little extra time at the end. So it's a total of 5 minutes, but plan on 4 minutes for each other.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jason. Have fun.
So Steve, we'll have to make a couple of adjustments because you're assigned to a room with one person.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
For some reason, and then, cool, let's move. Are you making the adjustments? Or
Nope. I'm just checking to see. I'm making sure that I'm not. Okay, I'm good. Because
no,
there were
you're
3
good.
in my room.
Yeah, I checked for that already. I'm going to move somebody to a room. Okay, cool.
I don't think I'm in a room.
I think because you're the host, we can't send you, Monique.
Yeah, so you can
go.
So
where would you guys like me to go?
That's a good question. So I made a room of 3 because I didn't realize that you were not in a room. So how about you go to room 8 and I'm going to move Tina to room 8.
Got you. I'll go to 8.
Perfect.
Cool, thank you.
Nice work, Caesar. Oh, I lied about the breakout rooms. It said at 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's impressive that happened. Hey, okay. A little bit behind on time, but I feel like it's going well.
Yeah, hang on 1 second.
Yes. Cool.
It's a pretty pleasant voice.
It is, yeah, I agree. Okay.
So obviously we'll do just ages and then it'll end at you and then you'll wrap it. And maybe make some comment if you notice a trend around ages of, yeah. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can't, yeah.
All right, now I feel horrible. All right, so Melinda probably was on and I was talking and she couldn't hear me.
Oh no.
Well, yeah, Melinda, if you're on there, I apologize. I was off of mute, but yeah, I don't know why my headphones stopped working.
I'm sorry, Kyle. I seen that you were asking me, but it seemed to be just Caroline and I in the group. Caroline, are you there again?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, I seen your messages, Kyle, but I wasn't quite sure what was happening. Caroline was sharing what we both shared. So I apologize because I would love to hear what you were trying to share.
No, I was sharing with Caesar and Jason that I think my mic wasn't working anyway. So.
Well, listen, there's another day, another tech challenge. I'm glad you figured out how to get the audio working now. And hopefully for most of you, you had an opportunity to both share a story and hear a story in those small groups. So thank you for taking that opportunity to share with your partner. Being able to ground our understanding of why we do this work, in our own experience is so valuable, right? Not just, the work that we do or the job that we have, but why this work matters to us personally, individually, and collectively is a really valuable process. So thank you for sharing that story and for thinking of it on your own. So what you'll see now is just one more prompt. We're going to do one more circle round where we'll invite everyone to follow the order in the circle and unmute and share. And we're not going to share the story, but we're going to give you a moment to try to think of the story. And then what you share is how old you were or what grade you were in, if that's easier to remember. But the prompt, what we'd like you to consider is, when did you first realize that your racial identity has or would have a significant impact on your life? And we'll ask that you share how old you were, just very quickly, your age, or if what you remember is your grade. And so in the same way that Caesar did, to give you a moment to collect your own thoughts and think of your own story, I'll share mine. And so you're welcome to sort of half listen to me while also half thinking about your own story. I came to know that there were people who had different skin color than me when I was pretty young, but race was understood as something that other people had, not something that I had. So I was 19 before I realized that I was white. And I was in my mid-20s before I understood how significant it was. But the story at 19, I had moved into a public housing project in the North End. I was living in Chappelle Gardens on Barber Street. I had a white roommate and a black roommate, and my white roommate and I were pretty much the only white people living in the area, in the neighborhood. I was volunteering in the schools in the North End. If I didn't leave, especially in the summer, if I didn't leave my neighborhood, I could go days and weeks at a time without seeing other white people. Because if you know anything about the demographics of the North End of Hartford, it's largely Black, West Indian, Caribbean, Jamaican. I didn't know I was white though, until I got a Christmas card from a grandmother. I had been running a neighborhood Bible club in her home with her grandson, and he was Black and she was Black. And the Christmas card said something like, "Jason, we've never had a white person in our home before. Thank you for helping me to know that it's okay to trust white people." And in my ignorance, I thought that was a racist thing that she had said. I had never been grouped together with a group of white people before. I was not familiar with people saying, because of your race, I don't think that you're trustworthy. And so I actually thought that was a racist thing for her to say. That was really the first time that I was aware that people see me and receive me and treat me as a white person, and that whiteness means something, that it's significant. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I came to understand the systemic nature of racism, and I'm continuing to be on a journey to understand the ways that privilege impacts me in my life as a white person. But it was that time at 19 years old that I was aware that I had a race, that I was white, and that being white meant something. So we're going to give you just another couple of moments to try to identify for yourself that story of the first time you became aware of the time that your racial identity had an impact on your life. And if you could, not share that story, but just share the age as we go around the circle. And so I'll say, Saba, you'll be up next. When you're ready, you can just unmute and share.
Oh my God, this is so amazing, this question. I was just telling Margaret, like, I think I had a lot of experiences where I understood viscerally about that I was Black, that I was Black in a dominant white space. And like, that's when I really was ever Black. In terms of like my understanding of it. And like, so the one experience was when I was like in 8th grade. And there was a lot of experiences, like so many things, but the one where I had like a confrontation with another white student, which poor guy, he didn't even know he was speaking the tape that he's, you know, that then gets socialized. But I think it's only been like in the last, I don't know, I was gonna be like last week, you know, just looking at your question about like that it would have a significant impact. Like, I feel like I kind of put some cushion between me and understanding like the collective data around having around anti-Black racism, around having a marginalized identity of being a woman and a Black woman, that intersectionality. And that's hard, y'all, because that feels like it's ongoing and there are lots of levels. And so I've really built in a lot of self-care as of last year, because like there wasn't any way to get through last year without like a ton of self-care. Because it's ongoing, and that part is hard. That's something that we find, I think, in this work. And so I hope we all like have spaces for ourselves to kind of care for ourselves as we deepen our consciousness around this subject.
Salva, thank you for sharing that story. And what's so challenging about being virtual and having limits on our time is I really want to hear the fullness of all of your stories. And for the sake of time, what I'm going to invite is that you hold that story and find time to share it with one another. But for the sake of this circle process, my invitation is that if you're able to, just share the age or the grade that you were aware that of the significance of your race. I'm like, as a person who loves you, Salva, I want to hear that story and I want to keep talking to you about it. As a person who cares about all of you on this call, even though I want to hear these stories. And for the sake of this circle process, the invitation is to share the age or the grade. And then we'll hopefully find time outside of this space to share and listen to one another's stories.
Well, that falls on me. So I guess the age would have been, gosh, more than likely 18 maybe. But it was probably younger, but really significantly like, wow, I'm Black when I was 18.
I think, so for me, I think it's probably the same age, like my senior year of high school. Definitely became aware of skin color earlier than that, but for the significant piece of it, definitely like senior year of high school, 18.
Is Yoshi still on the line?
No, thank you, Jason. Yoshi had to step out for a bit. So if somebody, Melinda, if you'd like to go.
And Melinda, you're double muted, I think.
Thank you, Monique.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
For me, I realized that I have to hit *6 on my phone. And I keep forgetting. For me, I realized it in kindergarten.
I'm next, and it was same for me when I went to kindergarten.
And then Lena, Sherry, Talia, so Tina.
18, freshman in college.
About the same, 18, my freshman year in college.
think California, if you're still on the line.
Sorry about that. A fourth grade.
I was around probably 14 or 15.
About 9, so fourth grade 2. Yeah.
Middle school.
17.
About 15.
Thank you all so much. You know, this is such a deep question. I was thinking about it for myself as well, and I definitely think 17 for me was a pivotal year. Listening to all of you share when you gain consciousness of that and how you became aware of it just illustrates the difference in our experience and the journey that we're all on. And as we share our stories with one another and we ask each other questions, we're able to unpack them. I'm sorry, did I?
We skipped one person, Caesar.
Oh, that's terrible. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Apologies. Dominique, are you on the line?
Hi, yes, I'm still here. I realized it my sophomore year of high school, so I was about 15.
Thank you, Dominique. I'm so sorry that I skipped you. And I think, yeah, I think as we dive deeper into this, and as you're seeing now, there are so many stories that are deeply connected to these experiences, and they really are a gift to ourselves as we begin to unpack things and make sense of them as we look back, as well as a gift to other people. Um, you know, it gives them an opportunity and an understanding of who we are. We know that some of these stories are painful, and so we thank you for thinking through this with us and sharing. And as we move forward, not just with today's training, but with this cohort, we invite you to always practice self-focus and to think about sharing stories and making decisions for yourself about sharing stories that feel comfortable for you to share. So thinking about that experience discomfort, like you can make some decisions around what's discomfort, what's uncomfortable, and what feels unsafe. And so you can go ahead and like taste that out for yourself. I love this framing that one of our colleagues uses of sharing stories from places where they have scarred as opposed to sharing stories from wounds. Sometimes some stories are too fresh, some ones are too deep, and we're not able and willing, and it's actually not safe to share them. And so we invite you to not do that, but we invite you to test out your own boundaries and to push yourself to think about that when you're sharing stories. In the chat box, as we move forward, I want to remind you all that this is not the end of opportunity, but rather the beginning for you to share stories with each other. Monique, thank you so much for suggesting that. And I would encourage you all to set up one-on-one meetings with each other, potentially to catch up. I am going to invite you to use the chat feature one last time, or maybe I should say one more time in case we ask you to use it again. And just write down one word that sort of lets us know how you're feeling right now in this moment. And I'm going to really ask you to center yourself in feeling. You know, sometimes we can go into a headspace, but really what is the feeling that you're sitting with as we're moving to the next place and we're closing this circle process. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to do that. And as you do that, I want to bring us back and close this circle the very same way that we opened it, with this really wonderful quote from our fellow colleague and activist, Yolo Akili. Remember, oppression thrives off isolation. Connection is the only thing that can save you. Remember, oppression thrives on superficiality. Honesty about your struggles is the key to your liberation. Remember, your story can help save someone's life. Your silence contributes to someone else's struggle. Speak so we can all be free. Love so we can all be liberated. The moment is now. We need y'all. So we're going to go ahead and end this circle, taking a moment to take in all of the things that are being said in the chat and taking a couple of really deep collective breaths. So I invite you to center your feet, really feel yourself and settle into your body and take one deep breath on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Inhale deep. Exhale. Now just invite you to do it one more time on your own. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for this. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to my colleague, Jason.
Thank y'all. So we had said at the beginning that we were going to check in about the halfway point and see if you needed a self-care break. We just kept it moving because we were in a really good flow. We now have 32 minutes left on our call, and I just want to check in with you. Y'all need a couple of minutes to go take care of something, or can we go straight till 3? What do you think? Let us know. Some like reactions in the chat box, head nods, messages. What you got? I see you keep going. Good to go straight through. Awesome. We'll say if you need a break, turn your camera off and go take it. If you need to handle something, go for it. We got 30 minutes left together and we're going to push, and then we'll invite you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So thank you all. As part of, oh yeah, no, now it's you, Cesar. I'll drop it in the chat box if you want to keep talking.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Jason. We are going to go ahead and introduce our equity and practice guidelines today. We are so grateful to Monique, Kyle, Kaya, and the team who have shared these with you at your last session. These, for us, are tools that we use both as strategies and as actual practices to create equity in the spaces where we are. You are going to have an opportunity to read them on your own, as if you haven't already. Follow that link. For the purpose of being with each other today, we just want to lift up 3 of them really quick to give us an opportunity and a flavor of how we can use these to be in community with one another. So once again, we know that we're not going deep into them. I'm cognizant of time, and I want to give us an opportunity to engage with these tools because they actually are tools that both Jason and I practice in our facilitation, and at least I think I can say confidently for both of us in our lives. So the first one that I want to lift up is move up, move up. This is an opportunity that calls us into being aware and mindful of our participation. If you are somebody who is an extrovert, if you are somebody who has a propensity to share, if you're the first person to raise your hand when a question is asked, we invite you to take an opportunity to move up your listening and to give an opportunity to help us create space so that other voices can make it into the room. If you are somebody who has a tendency to be a little bit more timid and be more introverted and potentially think things through before sharing, oftentimes maybe not given the opportunity to do so, we invite you to move up your speaking and your participation. We invite you to mindfully come into the space and share with us what you might be thinking, so that we can all share space in a way that creates an equitable environment. And this is a practice that I invite all of us to do today.
The second one that we'll lift up on this call this afternoon is to honor intent and attend to impact. And Cesar already talked a bit about this when he talked about compassionate accountability. We know that sometimes, particularly in cross-racial or cross-cultural interactions, what we intend to do or say doesn't match the impact, how another person receives or experiences it. It's important for us to be able to recognize that those can be different. And it's okay for us to honor the intention, but it's more important that we attend to the impact. As the person who has said or done something whose impact doesn't align with the intention, I'm responsible for both. And we will sometimes use the example of, if I'm walking past somebody and without paying attention, I step on their toe. I didn't do it on purpose. That wasn't my intention, but I still caused harm. And therefore, I'm responsible for both the intention and the impact. And in this space, we want to separate both and recognize our accountability to both.
Thank you so much, Jason. And lastly, one that I think is really important for us, not just today, but actually for this cohort as we move forward, is expect and accept non-closure. Oftentimes when we go through things, specifically when we're trying to figure out how to create equity, how to address racism, there might be minutes and times when folks think that here is the list of things that you need to do. Here's like the way. And so we can think of it as a really finite process or checklist. I know that a lot of people in the scope won't do that, but there can be sometimes an expectation that we're going to get to a place where we figure it out and we get to wrap it up and box it and tie it up. Whether it's about that or about something different, the reality is that we need to anticipate and expect that we might not get to that place, that there's not going to be closure. And we need to accept that as we think about how to best move forward and develop the next step. So today we know that we're not going to get to the end of everything. We're not going to get to the root of how to fix all of the problems that we're trying to address. So we welcome you to expect that and accept it, but it doesn't end here. There's a continuation and we can still move forward, be hopeful, and figure out where to go from here.
And so we offer these three, but also the full list that we dropped in the chat box and what's visible here as our guidelines for our time together, the last 30 minutes on this call and the 2 hours we'll spend together in session 2. And you'll notice the last one is a question. Is there anything else that y'all need to create both a safe and brave space? Recognizing, as Cesar said, the difference between safety and comfort. We do want this to be a brave space. We also want it to be a safe space where our emotional well-being is cared for. Now we know that the world's not a safe space, so we can't actually offer a safe space. More safe for some than it is for others, but we can work to create that together. So that's an open-ended question. Is there anything that y'all need from us or from each other to feel like you can show up as fully and authentically yourselves to maintain that balance between safety and bravery? And you're welcome to unmute or drop something in the chat box if you need something else. Cool. And we can revisit this as a concept and as a tool again. Awesome. All right. So we're going to move now and spend the rest of our time together thinking about power and other concepts and terms around establishing shared language. Often in movement spaces, people use words and just assume that other people know what they're talking about. And because we all have different relationships to history, different relationships to our own ethnic or racial identities and experiences, we understand concepts and terms differently. And so in order for us to think about building power effectively, we need to make sure that we're all talking about the same things. So we're going to establish a set of shared language, and it's one of the resources that's going to be shared with you in like a document. Cesar will drop the link, not just yet, but in a moment in the chat box, and you'll have access to that as an ongoing place. Our guess is many of you on this call already know this language and likely could teach this workshop around shared and common language. So we want to recognize and honor that a lot of you have this knowledge, but we have not yet as a group engaged in a process where we all agree that this is the knowledge that we're moving forward with. We don't have a collective base of knowledge. So that's what this process is about. Some of it may be new, unfamiliar, or different, but a lot of it is going to be familiar for some of you, and that's good. We're going to create that collective shared experience so that we all walk out of here knowing when we say power, this is what we mean. The difference between prejudice and racism is this. We'll have those working conceptions so that we know what we're talking about when we talk together. So the first concept that we're going to talk about is that of power. And we define power in this way: the ability to create, change, or benefit from the rules, access to and or control of resources. There's lots of different forms and manifestations of power. We're going to be talking for the next couple of moments specifically about unilateral power, or power over. Power in and of itself is not bad and is not good. Power is neutral. Its use connotates, or its use determines its connotation. So whether power is used in good ways or in bad ways determines how power shows up. The power structures that we're familiar with are unilateral power, power over, institutionalized power. That's often the ways that we understand and conceive of power. This power is systemic, meaning that the system has been in place for so long that it operates like a well-oiled machine and does not need your active participation. Mostly, the only participation it needs is for you to not work to resist it or subvert it. It's like a social current that we're born into, and this current only flows in one way. Most of us don't even know that this current is there because it's been flowing for so long in the same direction long before we got here. It's almost become invisible. And the group that's been set up in this current to benefit has been made to feel that they've done so solely on their own merit, that they've deserved it. As long as everyone plays their part to maintain the status quo, the current keeps flowing without our intentional disruption. Unilateral power or power over is a zero-sum game. No one wins. It's set up on a scarcity mentality. Power over is scary. Power over is transactional. Power over is oppressive. We're going to talk more about the concept of power with. That's shared, relational, and whole power. If power over is finite, power with is infinite. It's expansive. It's collective. It's the kind of power that we talk about in organizing. It's rooted in the belief that the more people have access to make decisions about their own outcomes, the more powerful all of us are. That's the conception of power with that we'd like to move into, but that's not currently what we experience. What we currently experience is power over. And all oppressive systems are rooted in this unilateral power, power over. Racism, sexism, hetero and cissexism, et cetera. All of the isms are about benefiting a specific group that's on the top at the detrimental expense of another. It's set up as a lead, follow, or get out of the way. There's a hierarchy, and the top makes the rules, sets the standards and the norms, determines how others are treated, and then how they're treated when they don't live up to those standards, rules, and norms, while the bottom is made to get on board or suffer the consequences. And usually both. Even for people of color who are on board, they are also suffering consequences. And everyone sacrifices, often without knowing it at first, to keep this system going or to survive within it. When it comes to racism, for white folks, many of us have been asked to sacrifice our heritage and our ethnicity to blend into the anonymity of whiteness. The things that connect us deeply to where we come from, many of our ancestors, mine included, changed our names or shortened the names or changed the spellings to disconnect us from our ethnic heritage and connect us instead to the anonymity of whiteness, to try to remove that ethnic connection so we could gain power that comes with whiteness. And whiteness is an ever-moving target that only works and functions to benefit itself. Italian folks, Irish folks, Jewish folks, and others were not considered white originally and suffered under the hands of oppression. But because their skin, like mine, was white, they were able to find themselves assimilated into the dominant culture of whiteness. At expense, at harm. There was harm to me and my people finding ourselves in this dominant, anonymous group of whiteness. And of course, this system of unilateral power of racism and white supremacy harms Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as well. For BIPOC folks who identify as Black and brown, they have to figure out ways to survive in this system of dominance. And often it comes through a process of assimilation at first, changing the ways of communication, lightening skin, straightening hair, not speaking native tongues, and eventually through patterns of resistance are some of the ways that people of color navigate and survive within that system of racial dominance. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about a system of unilateral power. So I want to provide a definition of the concept of privilege. We define it as the unearned advantage a person experiences because of an identity that fits into the mainstream or access to power. So a privilege is an unearned advantage a person gets because of an identity they have. So highlighting unearned and tied to identity. When I walk into a room, people automatically assume that I have important and intelligent things to say. They usually assume that I am well educated. They will often defer to me as a leader. Some of that is because I'm white. Some of that is because I am a man. Often it's because of the sort of the relationship of both of those things. Now, I have worked hard in my life to have important and intelligent things to say. I do have an educational background. I am often an effective leader. But before I've said anything and before I've demonstrated any of that, it's assumed to be true. That's an unearned advantage I have. That's an example of a social or cultural privilege that I get as a white person and as a man. I could also talk to you about the financial and structural systemic advantages that I get about being a white person. But the concept is they are unearned advantages tied to my identity. The converse concept is oppression, the unearned disadvantage a person gets because they have an identity that has been marginalized or distance from power. Again, unearned disadvantage tied to a particular identity. We offer this framework of this pyramid of power for a few reasons. One, in this framing, you cannot have an experience of oppression without first having an experience of a group receiving privilege. Very often when we talk about racism, sexism, or other isms, we talk about only the impact on those experiencing oppression and marginalization. So we'll talk about racism by talking about the disproportionate impact, the harm experienced by Black and other communities of color. Yeah, of course we have to have that conversation. Why do we have some groups experiencing disproportionate harm? Because we have other groups experiencing disproportionate safety and privilege. We have to have that conversation too. That's why talking about whiteness and white privilege matters in conversations about racism, because we don't get to an experience of oppression without there having first been an experience of privilege. So in the way this framing is designed, we have to talk about both. The other thing, as you'll notice, it's sort of like the top of an arrow that's always pointing up. One of the things that power is designed to do is to protect and insulate itself. It's designed to keep us always looking up. If we're always looking up, those of us who experience privilege, we become disconnected from the reality of those who are experiencing oppression as the result of our privilege. If we're always looking up, those who are lower in this hierarchy can see the dynamics of power at play, and those who have more privilege, those who are closer to power, are kept unaware because we're so focused on the power that we don't have, the fact that someone always has more than us, that we are unaware of our position in relationship to others experiencing oppression. That's one of the ways that privilege becomes invisible and is really hard for people who experience privilege to be aware of. Those who are in oppressed positions are usually very aware. And I think some of you even named, there's this sense of, for folks of color, knowing in your body that this system is real, that it is setting some up for success and others for failure. There's a embodied knowing if you are experiencing life at the margins or under the weight of oppression. That's the way that power is designed. People who experience privilege are less likely to understand that. And as we talk about concepts of intersectionality and interlocking oppression, we're talking only about the position of dominance that white people have in a system of racism and white supremacy. All of us hold dominant or privileged identities and oppressed or marginalized identities, right? Whether it's being cisgender, whether it's being a native English speaker, whether it's being a heterosexual, whether it's being a Christian, whatever place where you experience privilege, you are less likely to be aware of the oppression that other people are experiencing. We're not going to talk more about all of that, but this is the framing that we want to provide when we're talking about power, unilateral power, power over, and the relationship between privilege and oppression. So, Cesar, do I want to go into the next set of terms or do we want to react to that a bit?
I think we should react to that a little bit because I think that this is the foundational building block of how we're going to understand the rest of our work and our time together. So I would like to make sure that if there are questions, if you have reactions, that we take an opportunity to engage with it because this really is a foundational piece that will inform the rest of our time. Thank you, Monique. I see that you put a couple in the chat as well. Feel free to unmute, and Jason also, if you feel free to engage as well. Monique is just reading. I'm sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just thought that breakdown was incredibly powerful. And I've obviously heard a lot of that before, but the way you broke that down, including how blending into whiteness to achieve that power for people who, who shed their ethnicity is harmful, I've never heard it broken down like that before. So that explanation was very powerful. That's my reaction to that.
Thank you, Jessica. I see some nods as well.
Definitely agree with Jess, because especially when you said the assimilation, it hit me in my core, like, wow, that's what I've been doing. Like, you gave it power, you gave it a name, and I don't know whether I feel enlightened or enraged right now. So I'm just like, I'm caught in the middle of like, I'm happy that I know what it is because I like to put names on things, but I'm also upset and hurt. And I think, as I say, anger always comes from hurt, a place of pain, that I have lived in this. I've assimilated myself for so long that I didn't come to this blackness awareness, this live, vibrant, I need to do something about racial inequality until 2020. And that broke my heart because I feel like, why didn't I know? Or not, why didn't I know? Why didn't I want to engage and interact? Was it fear? Was it pain? Or was it just, I'm not really a part of that?
Thank you, Talia, so much for sharing that. And I just want to say that it could be all of those things, right? Like all of those things are reasons that we all walk through. Um, and, and I love the way you frame it, like anger does come, like anger comes from grief, from pain. Um, we are living in a society where, remember earlier when I talked about that armor that we've been building up? We build that armor around ourselves to protect ourselves. Like we are walking through a harmful society where we are constantly being harmed and hurt. And so we do what we have to survive and to protect ourselves in those spaces. And in the ways in which we can and do sometimes, that armor can look like, assimilation. That armor can look like letting go of crucial key pieces of ourselves. And we're actually losing ourselves in that process. And so the process of getting rid of that armor is that process that you're talking about, the process of coming back to ourselves and really embracing fully our experience and grieving and coming back into it. Thank you, Jason, for that quote. I love that quote so much. Do the best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And we're all on that journey. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate that.
I just wanted to add, I really appreciated the Jason, the point that you made about the arrow always looking up. I do think that happens quite a bit, and visually you see that. The only thing I would add to me is that I think there are plenty of people who know they have privilege, but they want to oppress others. Like I think that's something that happens. We saw it with Trump and the rest of them, and I just wanted to acknowledge that they exist too.
100%, 100%. And I think that's something that we can unpack. We won't unpack it today, but that's definitely something to lift up. And you're going to have an opportunity to go through this over the course of the cohort. Okay, so I do want to move us. Thank you so much. Those were some really powerful reactions. Jason, go ahead. You have something to say?
I'll just say, I am continuing my own journey and being able to understand and communicate about these concepts. And I just it would be remiss if I did not say, this is not I understand this because Black women understood this before me and taught me, right? Like the Matrix of Domination is Patricia Hill Collins, the work of Beverly Daniel Tatum and understanding, the identity development around race. My own personal colleagues and friends, Boulong Rameeth Hall and Shay Washington, like I only know this stuff because I'm reading Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and others. And so I've gotten good at communicating about this stuff, but this isn't my stuff. And so I want to just be very clear and name that there is a legacy, generations of people of color, mostly Black women specifically, who have an understanding and communicating about this stuff long before me. And I learned from them. And it's on, it's their legacy that I have opportunities to communicate out.
Yeah, absolutely necessary. And we do need that list. So we'll share that list, resources and further reading, because yeah, all of our knowledge is knowledge that has been built on our, relationships. And that's why relational power is so important, is because that is actually how we are able to gain a deeper understanding, not only of ourselves, but of our collective experience. And so that's why you're hearing us talk a lot about that today. And that's why we're spending so much time building those relationships in this cohort. And it's at 2:53, I'm becoming super conscious of the time. This always happens to us, but we're gonna move through and share the rest of these definitions with you. So when we talk about power at the core is crucial when we think about racism. And when we think about racism, our definition is race plus intentional and systemic power to dominate, discriminate against, and dehumanize Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And I just could not get to this definition without us really sitting on that, comprehensive framing of power first. Agreed. So we're gonna move through. So then when we think about equity, we're talking for us, and this is a framing that we've gotten, is when everyone gets what they need to go and thrive. It has an equity emphasis actually seeks to render justice by deeply considering the structural factors that benefit some social groups and harm other social groups. So sometimes justice demands that for the purpose of equity, we give an unequal response. And this is crucial and key for us to think about, because oftentimes this gets misconstrued, and what we end up with is people talking about feelings of fairness, the subjectivity of what it means to be fair. And so it is really important that we understand that in an equitable environment, in an equity framework, we understand that when we're talking about equity and justice, sometimes for the purpose of achieving it, we are going to give an unequal response, which externally to other people, they might come back to us and say that feels unfair. And that oftentimes happens. So it is crucial for us as we begin to engage in this work that we begin to really think about the ways in which we are framing this conversation and the way that we are thinking and talking through the concept of equity and the concept of justice. Some other shared language that I want to share with you, and don't fret, I know we have 5 minutes, but you're going to get a list of all of this and you're going to have time to read it on your own and to come back and make sense of it. But we will be talking about mainstream identities. These are dominant social identity groups, privileged by birth or acquisition, which knowingly or unknowingly exploit and reap unfair advantages over members of our groups that are marginalized. And I believe, Jessica, yes, you will get access to the recording, so you'll have an opportunity to take a look at this again. People with mainstream identities are also trapped by systems of oppression that benefit them and are confined to prescribed roles and behaviors. And that's a little bit of what we talked about earlier. Mainstream identities that have power to define the norm see themselves as normal and can sometimes superior. You'll also hear us talk about target or non-target groups and dominant groups. On the other side of mainstream identities, we have marginalized identities. Those are social identity groups that are disenfranchised, exploited, and historically victimized in a system that benefits and is designed by mainstream identity groups. So people with marginalized identities often have their choices or movements restricted, are seen and treated as expendable, and without an individual identity apart from their group identity. You'll also hear us use language like target groups and oppressed groups. We will talk about prejudice because oftentimes people want to throw out there reverse racism. They want to throw out there some additional, understandings of what racism is, and they're oftentimes talking about prejudice. That's a feeling or belief that we have about a person or group based solely on an identity that they hold. And then discrimination, treating someone unfairly because of their identity that they hold. I'm going to go ahead and move us through, Jason. I was going to try to engage us with some questions, but I think that, we're going to go ahead and move through this. Let's go ahead and let's get into mainstream. I'll pass it back.
Actually, the image isn't loading, which is fine because we don't have time for it anyway. We will say that the system of power that's at work is impacting all of us all the time. It is impacting us, and we have opportunities to impact it, right? That's part of what we're talking about. We think about shared power or collective power, and that's an organizing frame, the ability to build that power together. Your homework or practice assignments, how we might like to call it, between now and the next time we gather is going to be to engage in reading an article and then completing a worksheet or set of journal questions that will specifically explore the cycle of socialization as described and informed by Bobby Harrow. That may be a process that's familiar to you. So it might be a quicker experience for some. It may be a newer framing and introduction for others. Either way, we're going to invite that you spend some time reading the article. It's, I think, 6 or 7 pages, and then engaging in, there are 8 reflection questions that we're going to ask you to respond to before we gather on our next time. If we had an all-day 8-hour workshop, over lunch, you would spend some time writing your journal reflections alone and on your own. Well, instead of being in person, you're going to take that as a practice assignment on your own time, and then we'll all come back together to engage in that. I think it's going to get uploaded into Band, so you'll all have access to these documents after today. You'll get this recording, you'll get the slide deck, you already have the shared common language, you'll get the equity and practice guidelines, you're going to have the resources you need to engage. Cesar and I are excited about getting back together with you. It's 2:59 p.m. And we wish we had more time to engage in a more sort of thoughtful closing exercise. But we'll just say, y'all showed up today and we appreciate you showing up. You brought yourselves, your head, your heart, and your hands. You brought all of the places where you were, and hopefully you're walking away feeling exhausted, enraged, passionate, curious, interested, all the things. And there's room and need for all of it. Movements for justice are going to take our tenderness and our rage, the places where we feel hard and the places where we feel soft. And so we're going to welcome that all of that into this space. So I'm going to turn it back to Mo. You got 30 seconds, Mo.
All right, and in my 30 seconds, I put a question in the chat that I'm expecting everybody to do their best and try to answer. What are you taking with you today, just so we know what you experienced? Our next session that's already been referenced will take place on March 12th. We will have the 12:30 open in the virtual lunchroom. We had a great conversation today about Chick-fil-A and real food. So I encourage you to come and be in community with all of your collaborative members. If you have not joined Band, make sure you do so. And again, thank you again for sharing time, space, and energy with us. We appreciate each of you. Have a wonderful weekend, because it starts now at 3 p.m. and my time is up.